animal name. So we'll see in France probably a reduction in their support for wheat because they're doing well at the moment.
Undoubtedly. And it will probably continue to remain good. Why? Because of the demand from China, the demand from India, and of course of biofuels, who are now looking to be making ethanol and other renewable fuels out of wheat and other things too. So a lot of what would normally be going into consumption is actually now going into fuel and fuel. The French also won't take genetically modified soya, so that completely knocks that market out, principally from Brazil and South America. So they're looking for the protein. They'll be principally looking for their own homegrown protein. It's where's agriculture going to go in France in the next few years? Who can say? It's always topsy-turvy. It's milk a few years ago was rotten. Milk is now exceptionally good. Arable a few years ago was rotten. It's now brilliant. Beef has always remained like that, and probably will remain so. If one could say that, well, what's going to happen in the world? Probably you'll find that the Asiatics will probably continue to produce all the poultry, the world's poultry, and possibly pigs, as well as the Danes, of course, and the Dutch. The lamb will still come out of New Zealand and perhaps Australia as well. The beef will still come out of France. Britain will become, I suppose, the dairy of world.
So, because England's putting a lot of dairy farms back in after only 2 years ago, taking everything out.
Yeah, but I mean, Britain don't know whether it's Monday or Christmas.
No.
They change on a daily
So
basis.
it's incredibly poor planning.
Well, it's remarkably poor planning because you have people that don't understand farming, and they never will. Whereas, if it's a very simple statistic. France became a urban population that was more than 50% in, I think it was the 1920s or 30s, whereas in Britain it was the 1860s. And you can still talk to a Frenchman in the middle of Paris and you can say, well, what do you know about farming? And he'll say, well, in fact, surprisingly enough, even though I'm standing in the middle of Paris quite a lot, because I've got a cousin or an uncle who's a farmer. Whereas you went and asked somebody in the middle of London, that was all, they're just polluters, and that's it, you know.
You know, in England you can see the supermarkets seem to have incredible power over the producers, and they seem to exercise it with sort of ruthlessness.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a fear in England, and there's a big move from the farmers to provide local, people to buy locally and get away from that supermarket power. In Europe, is the supermarket power as strong as in England, or is that a unique situation?
No, certainly in France, I can't speak for the rest of Europe, certainly in France is that you have big buying centres for all the 4 or 5 main supermarket chains, which are similar sort of what you have in New Zealand, but has to buy French. The supermarkets have to respect that. The butchers also still have a very strong, and the greengrocers still have a very strong presence. Whereas in Britain, you can go and ask any consumer, and you say, well, what is the criteria for you as far as your food stuff, what you're buying for the family is concerned, and they'll say price. And I even know of a report that was done, a study that was done by the organic system, the organic producers in Britain on the same kind of study of consumers, asking consumers what they bought on, were they interested in organic, and the reply was not. I mean, 80% was still saying we buy on price. Whereas, okay, yes, I mean, to a less extent, France is getting that way, but that's because we've only just starting to introduce in the last 4 or 5 years these what I call pilot high, sell it cheap type of Walmart and other type of supermarkets that are producing or selling lower quality. You still have the main supermarket chains, the Carrefour, the Auchan, Casino to a certain extent. They still are producing, still selling better quality product for the French consumer.
And from a New Zealand farmer's point of view, looking at our sheep meat market in Europe, what do you see our future as supplying sheep, the future of sheep meat consumption in Western Europe?
Well, certainly as far as France is concerned, I can only answer as far as France is concerned. I mean, there's really little market, to be honest, because the French are very wedded to their own farmers, and when they do want to go and buy a leg of lamb, they buy a French leg of lamb.
Yeah.
I actually have had the advantage of having worked in an abattoir in Hastings, an old Weddell abattoir, and I always ask myself, well, since I've been living in France since 1993, I've always asked myself, well, why aren't the New Zealanders doing more to develop the carbon dioxide vacuum-packed, chilled carcass that they were doing at the time when I was over there in New Zealand in the early 90s, even earlier in 1993. So why not? Because the French will eat they prefer chilled rather than frozen. So where is your future supplying Britain? Because you're used to it. If I said to you today, or I said to a British consumer, well, why not have, let me think, South African produced lamb? They'd say, well, we're not used to that, so why should they? They know where they are with New Zealand, and trying to convert somebody, a consumer, from what they're used to something that they're not used to, that's a whole, that's a cost that takes a lot of marketing and a lot of big budget to be able to convince people to change.
So we'll be stuck basically with the British market.
I think so.
Lamb.
I think so.
And with Australia trying to get a bigger quota for its own lamb.
You're going to. It's where the New Zealanders are going to dip out, obviously. There.
And England's the only market for our lighter lamb, so we're very dependent on it. Oh, well, thank you very much.
No, it's okay, my pleasure.
Yeah.
My pleasure. Hopefully see a few more New Zealand farmers over here.